Hello student, from today we start with the head and neck. So we start also with the demonstration of the head and neck and the skeletal of the head and neck. So as you see, our first demonstration is about the skeletal of the head. The skeletal of the head, it is popularly known as skull, right? Now skull, it is formed by the many bones. These bones are connected by the one special joint that you already know, that is a suture. So ultimately, as we say the name only the one skull, but actually in the skull there are around 28 bones. And when we say a skull, it also include the mandible in it. But popularly, when we see a skull, what means comes in our mind is without a mandible, skull without a mandible. Okay, now basically, if you can see here, skull as a divided into two basic part. The one part, this we can see this upper part, right? This is known as a brain box or the neurocranium or cranium, right? Because here there is a brain is enclosed. Another part of the skull, that is directly when we see from the front, which is the bone which form the skeletal of the face. This is known as a viscerocranium. So which are the bone in the both part? If we see this part, neurocranium, how many bones you can see here? See, there is again a paired bone and the unpaired bone. Some bone are the paired and some bone are unpaired. Okay. Now, which are the unpaired bone? Which bone which form the neurocranium? Now, this is frontal bone, which is a unpaired, only a single. This is the parietal bone, which is on the both side. Posteriorly over here, we have the occipital bone. It is again a single. This is a temporal bone, right? This is again a bilateral. Okay. Then here, this part that you can see over here, this part, it is a sphenoid bone. Okay. Now, if we make a list that bone which forming a neurocranium, which are the unpaired bone, that is a frontal bone. This is a frontal bone that is a unpaired. Then posteriorly, occipital bone is unpaired. Okay. Then here is a sphenoid, and deep to it is a ethmoid. These are the unpaired bone. And which are the paired bone which form the neurocranium? This is parietal bone, which is also bilateral. Then this is temporal bone, and what you can see here, it is a external auditory meatus, and deep to it is a middle ear. Again in a middle ear we have the three bones, that is a malleus, incus and the stapes. So in a neurocranium, right, neurocranium, it is a mainly, again the neurocranium is a part of this bone which enclose the brain. It has this area is known as the vault of the skull, and this is known as the base of the skull. So two part in the neurocranium we have. Okay, so neurocranium, again if we make a list of the bone which form the neurocranium. Okay, for just we remove the mandibles, so we have the better idea right now. Okay, so bone which form the neurocranium means the part of the skull which enclose the brain. That is, unpaired bone is frontal bone, occipital bone, here is a sphenoid, and deep to is a ethmoid. So it is a total of 4 bone. And which are the paired bone part of the neurocranium is parietal bone, temporal bone, and 3 ear ossicle, that is a malleus, incus and the stapes. So total of 5 bones. So we have again 10 bones. So in the neurocranium we have a total 14 bones. Okay, then a part of the bone which form the facial skeletal, that is we known as a viscerocranium. Okay, again here also there is a paired and the unpaired bone, but here the unpaired bone is only a 2, that is one is a mandible, that is a unpaired, one is a vomer which is in the nasal septum. Only the 2 bone is unpaired, rest of the all bone, if we start from here, right, this is a zygomatic bone, this is a maxilla, here nasal bone, medial to it there is a lacrimal bone. Okay, then if you see on from below here, this, okay, from here Okay, this part is a palatine bone, and one more is a we have the inferior nasal concha. Right, so these are the bone which form the facial skeletal. Okay, now so total again we have a in a facial skeletal we have the 6 bone which is a pad, and the 2 it is a unpad, again a 14 bone, so total 28 bone which form a skull. Okay, now the skull, the different bone, they are connected by a joint. Which joint is, now see from here we can see, right, you can see this is a some serrate like structure, they joint the different bones. So this is a known as a suture. So the majority of the skull bone, they are connected by suture. We can see from here, you can see also from this side also, right, these all are the sutures. Okay, only there is a 3 synovial joint. Which 3 synovial joint? One is temporomandibular, between the mandible and the temporal bone, that is we also known as a jaw joint over here, that is a temporomandibular, it is a synovial joint. And the 2 synovial joint, it is a between the malleus and the incus and the stapes, and the rest of the all joint, it is a sutural joint. Okay, so this is the basic about the skull. But we study a skull as a whole, we are not going to study a separate bones. So how we study a skull? In a different manner. So we study a skull like when we see a skull from the above, like this, right? This part of the skull, what you are right now seeing, it is known as a norma verticalis. When we see a skull from the behind, this is known as a norma occipitalis. When you see a skull from lateral side, this is known as a norma lateralis. When you see a skull from front, this is known as a norma frontalis. When you see a skull from below, right, inferior side, this is known as the norma basalis. And one more thing is, when we open the skull cap, this is also known as a skull cap or calvaria. We can open it. When you open it, this internal structure, this is known as cranial cavity. Okay, so we study a skull under a different heading like norma verticalis for the superior view, right, norma verticalis, again superior view, norma occipitalis, posterior view, norma lateralis, lateral view, norma frontalis for the anterior view, norma basalis for the inferior view, right, and cranial cavity for the interior of the skull. So this is the how we going to study a skull. So we start with the norma verticalis.